Grandpa uncovered the truth about my dad's financial struggle and now he wants me to move back home, but I'm torn with the comfort of my own life. I, F21, lost my mom when I was 14. Dad remarried when I was 17. My stepmom has a daughter, F15, she and dad had a boy M3, and now she just gave birth to a little girl. Anyway, I have worked since I was 16, to have so money to buy stuff for me. When I turned 18, dad said I was now an adult and should start paying rent. It was only $500. A symbolic amount since he would still cover food and other essentials. I was mad and we fought, but in the end I accepted and that was the arrangement until 7 months ago. Dad came to me saying I had 2 months to move out, stepmom was pregnant and they would need my room for the baby. Which is insane because they both have private offices. My stepmom doesn't even need one since she's a SOM since the birth of my baby brother. Nonetheless they told me I had to move. BTW, just an addendum, me and stepmom get well fine. We don't fight or bicker. I don't think this was a evil stepmom moment, but who knows. Me and stepsister are actually pretty close, I help her with homework, and talk about her personal problems, I do love her very much. Back to the story, I didn't know what to do. I'm going to a college, I want to be a civil engineer, and work part-time. I don't have the means to live by myself. I called my aunt, asking if I could move in with her for the time being, until I figured something out, offered to pay rent and all. She was aghast at what dad was doing. She said I absolutely could live with her, no rent needed, but also said she was going to deal with my dad. The next day Grandpa came to our house, and they talked privately. I could hear my dad's angry voice, but couldn't understand anything being said. After a while Grandpa came to my room and said I had 3 choices. The first was continue living with dad and stepmom like I was doing, nothing would change except without paying our rent. The second was moving in with him and grandma, or my aunt. Third was find a place of my own and he would pay the rent and costs for me. He said I didn't need to choose now, I could keep living with dad and if I changed my mind to just tell him. I was actually relieved I could still live with dad, and that this madness was over. But the following days and weeks, dad and stepmom were very hostile towards me, and I felt incredibly uncomfortable being in my own home. Even Cassie picked this up and asked me why they were angry at me. So I decided to move out and told Grandpa. He said he would take care of everything. Few weeks later he moved me into one of his rental units. The apartment is lovely, he bought me a fridge, stove, and other essential items. He gave me a check for $15,000 saying this money is to help me start living on my own. And that as long as I am working or studying, I can live there rent-free, for as long as I want. My dad and I have been pretty low contact since I moved out. He never came to visit me, or I visit them. I miss them a lot, especially my stepsister, but I'm still hurt. 2 weeks ago, my stepmom gave birth, I visited them in the hospital. It was a little awkward, but nice seeing them and my baby sister. Anyway, few days ago dad calls me, saying he misses me, the children misses me, and I should move back home. He apologized for asking me to move out, etc., and I told him I would think about it. Yesterday I visited my aunt, and was telling her what my dad said, and my cousin laughed a little and said I'm sure he does. I asked what he meant, and that's when they told me a lot of, until now, unknown information. Basically, my dad's home, is actually my grandpa's. As is my aunt's. Basically the deal he made with me, he did with all his kids and some grandkids as well. He never wanted any of his family to have to worry about basic stuff like house, and food, etc. When I called my aunt that time, she called Grandpa, which was furious with dad, not only for kicking me out, but also for charging me rent. That day he went to my dad's and tore him a new one, and threatened to have him evicted. But now the petty part, you know that $15,000 Grandpa gave me? It's actually what I paid dad in rent all that time. And now he's making dad pay him back. Also, he's charging dad $1,200 for the rent loss in apartment I'm living in. Call me dumb, or naive, but until now, I never realized my dad didn't make that much money. We lived in a great house, always went on vacations, and lived very comfortable lives, but I guess Grandpa has always been helping behind the scenes. Now my cousin thinks dad is struggling, with 3 kids at home, a single income, and having to pay it back to Grandpa. So he says dad wants me back, because he imagines Grandpa will stop punishing him if I'm back living with them. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I'm actually loving living on my own these past 6 months. But I do really miss them, I miss my siblings. I miss the life we had before all of this, but I don't know if moving back home is the right answer, and also. Update 1. Monday, the day after my post, I called dad and said I decided to not move back. I didn't mention anything I was told, just that was well settled here, and moving back seemed like a step back. But I also said I wanted to keep in contact with them. They could invite me for dinner whenever they wanted, and I also said I would love for my stepsister and brother to be able to spend time with me here at home. He was disappointed, and I didn't feel any angriness in his tone at least. But he basically said a we'll see and left at that. I was also disappointed. But then Friday he called me, asked me if I wanted to have lunch Sunday. Today, I said I already had plans with Grandpa and Grandma. He asked when I would be free. So we scheduled a dinner for Thursday. I haven't told any of this to my stepsister, we talk and text regularly. She also haven't heard they talking about me. But she did say her grandma, her mom's mom, is there to help with the baby and is being incredibly annoying. I laughed at that. I wanted to offer her to sleep over here, but didn't want to get her excited just for Dad to say no, so I'll try talk with them Thursday. The big update is I've just came back from visiting Grandpa and Grandma. We spent a lovely day together. But I also said I wanted to know everything that was going on. I wasn't a kid anymore and I felt like living in lies. The most important things were things my cousin and aunt told me last week. But there were a few more. Grandpa had been subsidizing quite often our basic needs, like school, healthcare, etc. Because Dad haven't 1 cent saved up according to Grandpa. Also my college fund was mainly contributed by him, and Mom before her passing. I guess that makes sense. I was also dumb to not realize this sooner. He also have set up funds for my baby siblings. And also one for my stepsister. Because he didn't want her to feel excluded and not have the same opportunities as her siblings. This man is incredible. I love him so much. And yes, I'm very lucky. I've seen so many people commenting this, not in a derogatory way, but being very supportive and nice. I know I'm very privileged to have grandparents and family members who can afford and are willing to help me. I hope one day I can help others the way they are helping me, anyways. I also expressed worries about Dad's financial situation. And he assured me Dad is fine, more than fine. He will have to be less frivolous with money for a while, but that he would never let any of his kids or grandkids to suffer, or be in the need for anything. As many of you said, he's trying to teach Dad a lesson I should have taught him a long time ago. So I'll stay out of it. I don't think I'll tell Dad that I know all of this. I know many of you said to confront him, but I think it's for the best if he continues thinking I'm oblivious. Lastly, we talked about why Dad kicked me out. He didn't have an answer either. I could see he and Grandma were very hurt by what Dad did. He said he asked for an explanation but got none. That's it for now. I'll continue trying to have a relationship with my siblings outside of my dad and stepmom. I also try to schedule some weekly dinner with them. I know what you guys said about my father is mostly true. But I need to at least try have a relationship with him, if not for him, for my siblings, and for me. But don't worry, I won't let him hurt me anymore. Update 2. Some people messaged me asking about how was the dinner. So last Thursday I went there after work. Gosh. I missed my siblings so much. And I spend majority of the time with them. My baby brother is not a baby anymore, he have grown so much. My baby sister is so cute. I could eat her alive. I never want to be apart from them anymore, doesn't matter what happens. Cassie, I said her name once in my original post by mistake, she's my stepsister, is the only one I maintain regular contact through calls and text. She's just an amazing person as well. She knows I didn't move out in the best of circumstances, but doesn't know the details, or anything about the money. I asked if she wanted to have a sleepover at my house sometime, and she was thrilled. If I hadn't stopped her, she would have started packing at that second. My stepmom's mom was still there to help with the baby. And guess where she's staying? In my old bedroom. They transformed it into a guest room. And the baby room was stepmom's old office, because it's closer to the master. Honestly, that hurt a little. I've only met my stepmom parents a few times, they were always nice to me. This time she kept looking at me weird, all the time. Didn't matter where I was or where I moved, she was keeping track of me, like she was expecting me to try and steal something. When I was holding the baby didn't leave my side. Anyway, apart from that dinner went as well as you can imagine. A little awkward, but I was glad I could see my siblings and spend a few hours playing with them. At the end I mentioned Cassie having a sleepover in the weekend. Her grandmother started saying that absolutely not, Cassie would not go. But to my surprise stepmom stopped her. She said if Cassie wanted I could pick her up Saturday after soccer practice. For dinner that was that. When I was leaving stepmom gave me a really tight hug. So many people were saying how she's just a evil stepmom that I kinda started to believe. But as I said in my first post, we always had a good relationship. I left very confused and emotional. Saturday afternoon I picked Cassie, we watched Inside Out 2, then we ate shawarma for the first time, which is basically a meat burrito. I don't see the difference, it was so good to spend the day with her. I'm so glad to have her in my life. Sunday I dropped her off, and went inside to see my other siblings. Dad wasn't there, he was out meeting a work friend. Some people asked what my dad does, he's a lawyer, and stepmom used to work for an advertisement company, but is now a som. We have another dinner schedule for Friday. I don't know if I'll ever find out exactly why they wanted me to move, or why charge me rent. I don't want to touch the subject now, because I don't want to jeopardize my relationship with my siblings. So I don't know if I'll have any more updates since things are settling down and is now just life. Story 2, fulfilled my girlfriend's Harry Potter role-playing in bed fantasy, only to find out that she was thinking of her ex the whole time. My GF is a hardcore Harry Potter fan. Or at least she used to be. I remember during the honeymoon phase of our relationship, she mentioned one of her fantasies was a Harry Potter roleplay situation where she was a professor at Hogwarts that ends up being seduced by one of her students. I didn't know what to do with that information at the time, but I thought it was funny and I never forgot about it. Less than 2 years later, I decided to bring out my inner wizard and figure out how to fulfill the fantasy my GF always wanted. After completing my Harry Potter research, aka rewatching the movies, I called my GF a few days ago and encouraged her to play along and avoid asking questions when she came over that evening. That was it. No spoilers. When my GF showed up at my flat, I was standing in the lounge wearing a Harry Potter costume and pointing a wand at her. She laughed. I referred to my GF as Professor and asked her if she remembered that spell she taught me during dark arts class that paralyzed people. My GF was still laughing, but she eventually nodded in response to my question. I waved my wand and shouted Petrificus Totalis. My GF struggled to stop laughing, but she managed to get into character and freeze instantly, as per my spell. I literally picked up my motionless GF and put her down on the couch. I proceeded to undress my GF while telling her how much I've always wanted to sleep with a mudblood and pump her full of pure blood seed. Not gonna lie, I cringed on the inside when I delivered that line because it sounded silly, but then again, I could tell my GF was turned on when I removed her underwear. It was working. When I was done going down on my GF, I waved my wand between her legs and said unimpregnate. I made her aware that I was going to penetrate her without protection and my made-up spell would prevent her from becoming a mudblood MILF. I unzipped my pants and banged my GF in my wizard uniform. She forgot she was under my paralysis spell and broke character a few times when she moaned and moved her body, but at that point we were both past the point of controlling ourselves and just did whatever felt good. The two of us came really hard. Based on the outcome, I knew my GF enjoyed what I did. However, post-nut clarity left her with mixed feelings afterwards. My GF said the fantasy was hot when it happened and she appreciated my effort, but replaying it in her head made her feel like we were acting too much like children to get ourselves off and that was kind of giving her the ick. She never said it in so many words, but I sensed that she was low-key trying to tell me that she outgrew her Harry Potter fantasy and I was probably too late. Instead of letting it go and moving on, I revisited the topic last night, almost a week since the fantasy. I decided to ask my GF what I could do differently in case I wanted to surprise her with a sequel. My GF sighed and said I could just copy and paste what her ex-BF did. She paused mid-sentence and looked at me like she suddenly realized she said something bad. Against my better judgment, I encouraged my GF to finish her sentence. She said she didn't really care about Harry Potter prior to meeting her ex, who was the OG Potter fan apparently. She said his nerdy obsession with Harry Potter was endearing. I asked how endearing. My GF dodged my question and said I should focus on the fact that she enjoyed the version of her fantasy I created. I asked what was her ex's version. My GF said if you really want to know. Before telling me that her ex enjoyed playing the role of a Quidditch captain who ends up missing the game and losing the tournament because he was balls deep inside his wizard GF. She said it was unexpectedly hot because her ex pretended to be reluctant and submissive whereas she had to be distracting and dominant, which was new for her. She said she didn't know she could squirt until she dominated her ex. I said I didn't know she could squirt until now. My GF awkwardly laughed it off and said I should be grateful I've never made her squirt because she always hated the cleanup. I asked my GF why she would plant the seed of a Harry Potter roleplay fantasy at the beginning of our relationship if her ex already did a better job. She rolled her eyes at me saying better job and said she was ill somewhat high on her ex during our first few dates and wanted to recapture the same magic from her previous relationship, but she eventually fell in love with me and forgot about her ex and his Harry Potter BS, until recently when she saw me in my Harry Potter costume, which automatically made her think of her ex. I should have stopped asking questions, but for some reason I couldn't. I asked my GF if she was turned on during the fantasy roleplay because she saw me in the Harry Potter costume or her ex. She said nothing. I asked if the ick she was feeling afterwards was not really the ick, but the guilt of knowing she was thinking of someone else fulfilling her fantasy instead of me. My GF said she was gonna go and she did. I didn't stop her. Now she's not responding to my messages or my calls. Update 1. My GF stopped ghosting me and agreed to discuss what happened between us regarding the roleplay. We were both understanding and apologetic and forgiving. My GF said she never expected me to remember the Harry Potter fantasy, let alone act it out years later without talking about it first and making sure that the two of us were on the same page. She said she was unprepared for the feelings the fantasy triggered. On one hand, she said I made her feel somewhat nostalgic because I reminded her of an experience from her past she really enjoyed. On the other hand, she said she wanted to forget about that experience because A, she was invested in her relationship with me and B, she eventually got over her ex and part of her moving on process was filing everything related to Harry Potter under ex-BF baggage. My GF apologized for referencing her ex when I was trying to brainstorm different ways to spice things up in the bedroom through roleplay. She said she was low-key upset at herself for thinking about her ex mid-sex and took her frustration out on me when she realized I was keen to roleplay again, despite her telling me that she got the ick from the whole Harry Potter roleplay experience. I apologized for surprising her with an expired roleplay fantasy that made her feel uncomfortable afterwards and for bombarding her with questions about her ex-BF. I promised to stop asking questions about her ex if she promised never to ghost me again. My GF thanked me for stepping out of my comfort zone with my Harry Potter roleplay and said she was willing to test out other roleplay fantasies outside of the Harry Potter universe if I was still interested. I said I might have a roleplay fantasy we could test out at that moment. My GF put her hand between my legs and said she was listening. I said I was Jack and she was Rose in Titanic, but instead of Jack freezing to death, a lifeboat rescued both of them just in time. However, Jack might still die of hypothermia, or worse, survive and then end up with a damaged dick due to frostbite, so now it's up to Rose to jerk him off in front of the other survivors to prevent the love of her life from getting gangrene in his genitals. My GF had her hand in my pants when I was done pitching the fantasy. She was entertained until I snapped my fingers and said, "Oh wait, my ex and I already did that one." It was a joke that instantly killed the mood, but I thought it was funny. My GF thought it was too soon and stopped touching me. I think my GF thought it was at least kind of funny because she didn't look mad. That being said, she showed 0% interest in sleeping with me after that. All of the above happened a couple of days ago, but work made it difficult for me to find proper time to post an update sooner. I think my GF and I are gonna be okay. Update 2. My GF and I were talking about weird sexual experiences the other night and I made the mistake of mentioning that not only did I literally dress up as Harry Potter before having sex with my ex, but I also pretended to actually be Harry Potter during sex. I explained to my GF that my attempt at role-playing backfired on me when my ex-GF revealed that her ex-BF also played the role of horny Harry Potter when the two of them were intimate, and based on the fact that he apparently made her squirt, which I never did, it became clear to me that the ex-BF did a better job with his magic wand than I ever did with mine. My GF unexpectedly hugged me at the end of the story and said, "There, my love, don't be sad." I was not sad. Mid-hug, my GF suggested that I redo my Harry Potter roleplay with her so that I could have a positive sexual experience to associate with Harry Potter. I said no need, I've moved on. My GF refused to accept that and said she wanted to see me as horny Harry. I said that was never gonna happen because the last GF who saw me as horny Harry unfortunately became my ex-GF shortly afterwards. My GF put her hand between my legs and convinced me to reconsider role-playing as Harry Potter. Cut to later that week. My GF and I agreed to do the roleplay thing at her apartment because she lived alone and I did not. So, there I was, standing in the hallway in my HP costume, practicing made-up spells while waiting for my GF to open the front door. The anticipation of sex was beginning to trigger an erection. By the time the door finally opened, the shape of my boner was somewhat visible. I didn't think that would be a problem until I locked eyes with the person who opened the door. It was not my GF. It was her mother. I covered my crotch with my wizard robe as soon as I realized who was looking at me. The mom struggled to stop laughing when she caught me covering up. My GF appeared moments later and begged her mom to please stop laughing and go away. Her mom, who now had her hand over her mouth to hide how hilarious this was for her, apologized for laughing and said I must be the new BF. I said yes. My GF sarcastically thanked her mom for showing up unannounced just before I arrived, which prompted her mom to congratulate her for finding her own BF for once instead of ending up with her sister's exes. Her mom looked at me and said no offense but her other daughter was too old to still be into Harry Potter and therefore it was safe to assume that I was not one of her exes. My GF apologized to me on her mom's behalf and said her mom was being a bitch because her boob job got botched. Her mom pointed at me while warning my GF that I was an unplanned pregnancy waiting to happen based on what she saw when she opened the door. I said that was not what it looked like. The mom said it looked like Harry Potter and the failure to pay child support. My GF didn't allow her mom stay any longer when she said that. Needless to say, my GF was no longer in the mood to fuck Harry Potter. We decided that horny Harry is a curse for couples and should be excluded from any roleplay fantasy we might practice in the future.